Well guys, in today's video, I did just want to take a look at some of the top stadium developments that will be happening in Australia and New Zealand over the next 10 years and do a little bit of a countdown from the least anticipated through to the most anticipated. And we will kick things off at number 8 in Western Australia. It is of course the WACA redevelopment, the West Australian Cricket Association ground. This was of course until Optus Stadium opened, the number 1 cricket ground over in WA, but really since Optus Stadium did open, it has sort of fallen away. They don't really play any international men's cricket here. It is basically just a ground for the WA state team and also the Australian and WA women's teams. This thing has been getting a big time renovation over the past 3 or 4 years. The total renovation costing right around $154 million, and it will be complete in mid-2025. The renovation really transforming the ground back into a boutique 10,000 seat stadium. It is a bit of a community facility. You do have the pool, you do have the health and fitness centres, the high performance cricket centre for the WA Cricket Organisation. You do have a museum there, cafe, and some function facilities. The renderings we do have are pretty basic, not the highest quality, but you can see they have demolished most of the stadium. You do just have the members side of the ground remaining. You do have the grass banks, but a lot of the stands have gone. They have kept the light towers though, which is good to see. And it would be nice to see this thing hosting some of the smaller test playing nations in test matches, given they only do draw 10,000-15,000 at Optus Stadium. It does look really bad, but I think at this point it is hard to see this stadium ever hosting international men's cricket again, unfortunately. Next up we do have the Mars Stadium redevelopment in Ballarat. This is of course the AFL Stadium. You do have the Western Bulldogs playing a couple of games a year here, and it is getting a renovation at the moment around $80 million. It is going to include 5,000 new permanent seats and increase the total seating capacity of the ground from 5,000 to 10,000, and the total capacity will increase to around 15 or 16,000 when before it was only around 10 or 11. It does also feature new amenities and also food and beverage options and just a few quality of life and comfort things for the spectators. Construction work on this did just start recently. There is an AFL game there in a couple of weeks where you will be able to see some of the images on the TV of what they have done so far, and it's really just those 2 new stands where it is sort of like a pavilion style, Adelaide Oval style construction there. The construction of this will be complete in late 2026, and of course this was going to be the athletic stadium for the Commonwealth Games in Victoria in 2026. Ultimately that was scrapped by the Victorian government because of the cost, but it is good to see they are still going ahead with these renovations. At number 6 we do have the UTAS Stadium redevelopment in Launceston. This is of course the AFL Stadium down in Launceston where Hawthorn have played games for around 25 years at this point. It is going to be one of the home grounds for the Tasmania Devils. They are meant to come into the competition in 2028, so they are doing a fair bit of work on this stadium before they come in. The redevelopment will be around $130 million. That is jointly funded by the Australian and the Tasmanian governments. The capacity will increase by around 2,500 up to 17,500 total, and it is going to include a new eastern stand, a new centre west stand, upgraded matchday facilities, lighting upgrades, new advertising boards, and they are infilling some of the seating in that 2-tiered stand that you do see sort of in the flank area. There was a big gap there before, but they have put a few more seats in there and filled it out a bit, and it does look pretty good. We did also get a couple of new renderings of these developments recently, and it does look pretty nice there. This is meant to get underway late in 2025, and it will be complete in time for the 2027 AFL season. Next up, we do have the Penrith Stadium redevelopment. We have talked about this before on the channel. It is a big upgrade for the Penrith Stadium there in Western Sydney, the home of the Panthers. Total of $309 million for this renovation. It is funded by the New South Wales State Government, and it did just get underway recently in the past month or two. Of course, the Penrith Panthers having to play away from their home stadium over the next couple of years because of the renovation. The renovation does include a new Western grandstand and significant upgrades to the Eastern Grandstand. You do obviously get the new player facilities. You do get the precinct around the ground with the training area, with the community facilities, the community area around the ground. Although really the capacity is only increasing by about 2,500. Total capacity will be 25,000 for sporting events and up to 30,000 for concerts. But it is sort of hard to see where the concerts are going to be coming from. Obviously there is a number of high quality venues in Sydney where they are more likely to get concerts held at rather than a suburban venue. The completion of the renovation is expected to happen in late 2026, and of course the Panthers will be back in their home ground for the 2027 NRL season. But all in all, it is a pretty nice development there in Sydney, although it does cost a lot at over $300 million. That is a similar amount to what CommBank Stadium in Parramatta costs to build. At number 4, we do have the proposed Wyndham City Stadium in the west of Melbourne. This will be the home ground of the A-League soccer team Western United, based there in Tarneet. And it is an interesting stadium. It is the first fully funded private stadium really of any sort in Australia. This is a model that is used a lot in Europe, where the soccer team will own its own home stadium, but usually in Australia stadiums are built by the government and operated by the government, so it is kind of cool to see one being privately funded and owned by the club that does play there. They do plan for this thing to hold around 15,000. It will be a soccer specific stadium. You can see there on the renderings the fans right on top of the action, right in tight with the pitch, whereas usually with the government funded stadiums they are sort of a rugby league and soccer hybrid, so you don't get that tight in sort of European style soccer feel to it, which would be pretty cool. They are saying this thing will open in 2026, but really there has been a lot of conflicting information about this. There hasn't really been any significant construction work that has got underway at this point. Info is hard to find. They have been talking about this thing really since pre the pandemic. It was basically a condition of the A-League license being awarded to this Western United team, but we have seen them playing at Amy Park, also in Geelong, in Ballarat, at a few other places, even in Tasmania, and the crowds have been pretty ordinary. So they really do need this project to get underway, to really establish themselves, get that identity going. And it is an interesting sort of precinct that they are planning there in Tarneet. It is going to be 63 hectares. You are going to have entertainment, business, residential uses in that area. They are planning on building a new train station, but it is hard to see how this stadium gets built by 2026 when really there hasn't been anything started. It is only a small project, only 150 million and a small capacity, but still that is a lot of work. With how long construction takes in Australia, probably hard to see that one getting done. Next up, we do go across the ditch to Christchurch, New Zealand. This One New Zealand Stadium, currently under construction. It is a 683 million New Zealand dollar project. We have talked about this stadium as well on the channel. It is a really cool project. You do have the fixed translucent roof, which is a very common design these days for enclosed stadiums overseas. It is a sort of unique design in Australia. We have seen it in New Zealand, in Dunedin at Forsyth Bar Stadium, which was built around 10-15 years ago. Similar design, although it is a lot more modern. This thing will seat around 30,000 people for sport, mainly rugby and soccer. We would expect, obviously, the Crusaders to play there. You will see a lot of All Blacks games being played there. And possibly we could see maybe an NRL team based in the South Island of New Zealand going forward. There have been a number of bids. We have talked about that as well, the Southern Kia being one of them. Maybe we could see an A-League side there. You did have the Auckland FC come into the A-League this year. They have been really good. It has really generated a lot of support for soccer in New Zealand. They have drawn good crowds. So maybe the authorities in the A-League maybe think, well, we can capitalise on that, put another team in a New Zealand market and really grow the game where it has been lagging behind a little bit in Australia. This thing currently under construction, as I said, you can see they have really done a lot of work on it. The roof and the facade, obviously under construction there. It is due to open in 12 months' time in April 2026. And it is pretty important where it has revitalised a lot of the centre of Christchurch after that earthquake they did have all those years ago. So really exciting project and certainly one of the premier stadiums under construction in either country. At number 2, we do have Macquarie Point Stadium in Hobart, of course. course, much talked about. This is a big condition of the Tasmania Devils coming into the AFL in 2028. This was the centrepiece. It was the condition under which the Tasmanian team was given the licence. Another stadium we have talked about a lot on the channel. You do have the 23,000 seats. You do have the translucent roof. It is a fixed roof, a first in Australia, of course. And of course, the second roofed stadium anywhere in Australia, of course, behind Marvel Stadium in Melbourne. The cost of this currently budgeted at $775 million. There have been a lot of question marks. Could that blow out to beyond $1 billion? I think that is pretty likely, just with the inflation, with the cost of getting anything built these days. Jointly funded, of course, by the Tasmania state government and the federal government. It has been in the news recently. Of course, a lot of politics going on in Tasmania, a lot of opposition to this stadium. The Tasmanian Planning Commission released a report in March, and it did highlight quite a few issues with the stadium. They said there is a big problem with the traffic and the pedestrian access to it because the stadium is located on the Macquarie Point, which is a port. It is basically an artificial peninsula right near the CBD of Hobart. The Commission coming out and saying that's a problem. It is going to be hard to get people in and out of the ground. There is no real train line or anything like that. It is just going to be buses and private vehicles as well as foot traffic. The impact on the state's finances and obviously the management of the site contamination were all question marks. But then it did come out that the commissioner who wrote the report was meeting with the No Stadium campaigners. Maybe there is a bit of corruption going on there. And the Premier, Jeremy Rockliff, who is a Liberal, he is a big proponent of the stadium, his government really making this thing happen and getting the AFL licence. He came out and said, we're not going through this process with the Tasmanian Planning Commission anymore. We are going to introduce the bill directly to Parliament in May, and they will bypass the Tasmanian Planning Commission, Parliament voting on this stadium if it gets approved in June. The construction of this thing will be getting underway late in 2025 and ready by early 2029. So we'll really know in the next few months what's happening with this stadium and really what's happening with the AFL licence, because if the stadium doesn't get built, the AFL has been very clear the licence won't be happening. Both the Labor and Liberal parties at this point supporting the stadium, but the government just needs the support of at least two upper house independents to get this thing across the lines. The Greens do not support it. Several of those other independents have come out and said we don't support it. So they just need two of them to agree to this thing, and most likely this will be rubber stamped in around July and construction getting underway late in 2025. And of course, number one, the most significant stadium construction in Australia or New Zealand over the next 10 years, it is of course the Victoria Park Olympic Stadium in Brisbane. This is the centrepiece of the 2032 Brisbane Olympics, and it was just formally announced in March by the new Premier in Queensland, David Crisafulli. It is going to be a 63,000 seat stadium in Victoria Park, in a green sort of area in the middle of the parklands there, just outside of the Brisbane CBD. Crisafulli came out and said enough is enough. We have to build this new stadium. We're not doing the Gabba redevelopment. That was previously already scrapped by the previous Labor government. They came out and said we're going to do the temporary stadium out at the Queensland Sports and Athletics Centre. That plan obviously was terrible. It was widely condemned. And really the government in Queensland had no choice. They had to do this. It was difficult for the Premier because in the campaign he said we're not going to do any new stadiums, but really left with no choice. I did predict this before the Queensland state election. The estimated cost of this thing, over $3.7 billion. Easily the most expensive stadium in Australia, one of the most expensive stadiums ever built in the world. It is going to host the athletics. It is going to host the opening and closing ceremonies at the 2032 Olympics. It'll obviously be the home of the Brisbane Lions, home of the Brisbane Heat in the Big Bash, and of course Australian international men's cricket. The Gabba is going to get demolished after the 2032 Olympics. A lot of people coming out and saying they are going to host the cricket at the 2032 Olympics, and that'll be sort of the swan song of the stadium, the last major event that it does host. The new government also coming out and abandoning the Brisbane Arena, which was going to be built in the CBD, that costing over $2 billion. so they could fund the new Victoria Park Stadium. We did also get a new rendering when this was announced. Obviously this will change before construction gets underway, but it is a pretty nice design there with the roof. It does blend in well with the parkland area, and it will be a good thing for, no doubt, the Brisbane Lions. They are growing. They've been very successful in recent years. A lot of fans. Will be good also for cricket and Big Bash as well. And the government also announcing a $7.1 billion infrastructure plan for the Olympics. Absolutely massive. There's also going to be a new aquatic centre and a number of other venue upgrades for the various sports in the Olympics. So there we have it, guys. That is probably the most hyped 8 stadium projects in Australia and New Zealand. I didn't include hypothetical ones that haven't been announced yet. Probably you would think over the next 10 years we will see some degree of upgrades or renovations for Accor Stadium in Sydney and Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. They haven't really received any major work since the early part of the 2000s. Maybe we'll see a new cricket stadium in Auckland. Maybe we'll see an upgrade to Eden Park or a new rugby stadium in Auckland as well. You do also have some question marks. What happens with the 20th AFL licence? Maybe that will be in Northern Territory. Maybe that will be in Canberra. They will need new stadiums or significant renovations for either of those cities, and possibly even a rectangular stadium in Canberra. The current stadium there is very dilapidated. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.